Hello and welcome to the FUT Weekly podcast. I have with me, as we so often do, 𝗵𝗽𝗀𝘃. Went for the introduction straight away rather than saying what we're going to talk about, but that's fine. Hello, 𝗵𝗽𝗃. How are we?
Yeah, that's all right, Ben. I like to think that you did that in order of importance. So importance one, me being here. Importance number two, whatever it is that we're going to talk about on today's pod.
Well, it's been a little while, so it does actually feel like that. It's nice to get everyone back together. And go on, I'll introduce our other guests as well. We are going to talk about the new FUT features that have been revealed, and that includes the new chemistry system, which is very interesting indeed. We'll go to Matt FUT Trading next. Hello, Matt. Welcome back to the pod.
Thank you very much, Ben. Yeah, I feel like it's been a little while, isn't it? But
new
season and things behind the scenes with flat buying and whatnot. So it's it's a busy time of the year. But I'm excited to start getting into all things FIFA Ultimate Team 23.
Yeah. We should say congratulations as well, because you're well on your way to buy somewhere, but it's not completely gone through yet, so you can have a quite bank on it.
Yeah, it's stressful. I've never been on the phone so much talking to estate agents and solicitors, so it's a nice change to be talking with you boys here today.
Yeah. Best of luck with that. And actually, I should say the reason why there's been a bit of a break in a podcast, not just because there was a recording scheduled, it got pushed back, and it's a tricky time of year to get guests and things like that, but also I've been moving out ahead of the move to the US for a year, so again, my excuses in early. We also have someone who moved not so long ago, a lot of moving going on, Nate the FUT accountant. Congratulations as well, and welcome back to the podcast.
Appreciate it, Ben, as always. Thanks for having me on. I think the last time I was on, it was for the NA Domination hosted by 𝗵𝗽𝗃, and that was a fun time.
Yeah, of course.
But it's good to be back, Yeah,
AKA the greatest pod in the history of pod.
Certainly was. Let's move on to the first major addition to FUT23. We tend to see a new mode, and we've certainly got one. It is FUT Moments. And if I was going to very simply explain this, and certain people, if I say this, will probably get it straight away. Others who haven't played these games may not know what I'm talking about, but Angry Birds and Cut the Rope. This is basically the FUT equivalent. And it's a small scenario, basically, that you go into, and you can earn rewards based on different difficulty levels that you set within FUT Moments. You can set it to 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star, and it will get more difficult as a result, but you'll get more reward back. You can retry as many times as you like. You can improve the stars that you've got for that particular moment by going back in there and trying to earn extra stars, but you can also just jump in and get the 3 stars straight away. What you'll be doing in there is objectives, essentially, like scoring a free kick or doing a specific thing at a specific time in a match, because the matches may well start at sort of 80 minutes and you have to score the winning goal, that sort of thing. And the clever thing about it is it ties into real moments, and the example they give is the rise of 𝘭𝘵𝗵𝗽, and you have to go in and essentially emulate parts of his career within these different moments. The nice thing is, if you complete something within your moments, because sometimes there are multiple things you need to do, that will actually pop up and tell you it's been completed in game, which is huge, and hopefully they can find some way to add that into objectives. But it is offline, 𝗵𝗽𝗃, and as someone who's not big into offline, how do you feel about this addition?
I think it's further evolving the FUT ecosystem, I guess, which I think is only a good thing for the grinders out there. It's another mode to be able to, I'm sure it's going to, I believe it's rewards based, right?
Yep.
So the balance that I guess EA will try to strike is to make it so that if you want to play it and have fun doing that, and it's another thing for, non-online players to do, the rewards are still like good and worthwhile. But if you're, a heavy online player, they're not like, oh gosh, I have to go out and play my moments this week. I think that's like the balance that'll be tricky to strike. But like regardless, like I think all of us are super excited about anything that brings more of what happens on the real life pitch into the virtual pitch. And so I'm excited to see, how this ultimately takes shape and takes form. I hope they're able to evolve and expand it. I would believe that it would have to be set up that way, because there's, theoretically you can't predict or plan for all the different moments that could happen during a season. So I think it's cool. And the fact that they're giving out, these free loan versions of a card to be able to complete the moments, I think it's great because you can try out a bunch of cards in Ultimate Team that you might not have otherwise.
Yeah, it does seem like it's going to be a very much live thing, and they will try to reflect real life moments that happen, which would be great. Matt, what are your thoughts on this? I know you play squad battles, so you're someone, or maybe not that much at this point, but you certainly commit to it at the start.
Yeah.
If you're interested in offline play, certainly this sort of thing will be interesting to people.
It's a really good concept, and I hope that they do fully support it with a lot of content updates throughout the year. Having daily updates on this is what we'll need, really. We don't want just sort of like we went with the whole like teams and live events in the objective section. We all thought that was going to be this like really like innovative new mode and it's really fallen by the wayside, I would say. I think with the way that the game is, we need to be seeing some half decent, quite unique rewards in there to engage the player base. I don't know if people are necessarily going to grind all that much if you can only get like 7.5k packs or something, or 5k packs. I think that's what they were sort of advertising on the pitch notes articles. So we'll see where they go with that. But no, it looks promising as we get going into FIFA 23 for sure.
Yeah, certainly. And Nate, anything to add on this particularly?
I think Matt had a really good point about the team events. That was one thing that came into my mind thinking about this, was like, it either could go really good or it could just be a flop. And I feel like the team events has been a flop. So I hope it's not like that. But I think I have more hope for something like this because I know 𝗲𝗍𝗄 mentioned like, will they add in like circumstances and like actual moments from real life games. And I think it said in the trailer video, the two guys that were talking said that they would consider and like their potential for like last weekend, say a player hits a great shot from outside the box and it's a goal, they might add that into the next week as like a moment to complete. So that sounds pretty cool to me. But yeah, I think it depends on the rewards. And also like if, you go to do one of these moments and yeah, it's supposed to be short and bite-sized, right? But what if you can't complete that moment on your first or second try? Then you might end up spending 10 to 15 minutes getting it done. That's one other thought that crossed my mind. But more chances to grind, a mode to potentially get rewards, or just kind of a different way to have fun. I'm all for it too.
The way I kind of thought about this, 𝗲𝗍𝗄, is how we're always like, we don't really like to complete SBCs. We're not big menu grinders. That this is almost like the SBCs for people who do gameplay, right? Because you're kind of getting to play the game in a short, sharp kind of way that you could engage with very quickly if you've only got a moment. And I think that is what makes me feel like it's promising, which I wouldn't necessarily normally say with offline stuff.
Are you suggesting SBC level rewards?
Well, you forfeit something for that, don't you? So I guess they probably can't quite do that. But I guess it would be kind of like SBCs and objectives.
Is there anything more valuable than your time, Ben?
That's true, yeah. And if you really value your time, 𝘵𝗃.co.
Yeah, that's right. That's where the name comes from. Time is valuable. You want to get rewarded for playing video games?
Yeah.
𝘵𝗃.co.
Always happy to give you a plug. And actually, just to finish off this section, I wanted to say I think it will be very seriously looked at or focused on by the content team, because it is a separate currency. If you look at the home screen, I guess in FUT, you can see alongside coins and FIFA points, the stars are there. So it has to be something they focus on, I would say. The other thing that's been focused on in the build-up is definitely, as you'd expect, the new chemistry system, which is a really big change. I mean, the chemistry system hasn't really changed since its introduction 10 or so years ago. So this is a significant moment. And when I'm explaining this, and I'll do my best, you really have to take it back, strip it right back to basics, forget about the old system. It's going to make it a lot easier to understand it, I think, if you do. But the biggest thing to start with, just in terms of compared to the old system, is that there are no position-based links. So the fact that players like your right mid and your right back linked in the 4-5-1 to give both full chem, if they were the same club or they were the same league and nation, that is no longer a thing. Those positional links do not exist. You can forget about them. But the idea of links being based around nation, league, and club are still very much the way chemistry works. But instead of it being positional based, it is based on the number of players in your squad in total. So there are certain thresholds, certain numbers of players that you need to reach to get a chemistry point. there are just 3 chemistry points, and we'll get to the boosts in a second, which is subject to change. In fact, these thresholds are too, actually. But basically, the way it works is if you have 2 players from the same club, then that would hit the threshold for a chemistry point for players from that club. So if you had McTominay and Ronaldo, then you would be getting a chem point for both of those because you'd hit 2 players for each club. With League, it's 3 players. So if you added in a Cancelo, then you'd have 3 Premier League players. So every Premier League player in your squad is going to have 1 chem point. But actually, McTominay and Ronaldo, because they have that chemistry point by both being Manchester United players, will get 2 chemistry points. Cancelo, if you were to add another Portuguese player, let's say it's someone from another league even, 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦, then you would hit 3 players from the same nation because you've got Cancelo, Ronaldo and 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦. They would have a chemistry point added to their total 2. So Ronaldo ends up being on 3 chemistry points, Cancelo would be on 2, and 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦 would be on 1. This may sound like you need to do some kind of complicated hybrid to get yourself the chemistry, but actually you could get all 3 chemistry points through just nation or just league. If you're looking to get Premier League players into your team, then just bring in 3 Premier League players, you'll get 1 chemistry point for those Premier League players. Bring in another 3 and you'll get 2 chemistry points for your Premier League players. Bring in another 4 and you'll get all 3 chemistry points for your Premier League players. And although it sounds like that might be the meta, if you like, to just build around a league, as many people do, actually there is a big difference here. And that is that if you have a player off chemistry, without any chemistry at all, they will have their base stats still. There are no stat reductions. So I think the big question people have been asking, Nate, is whether this is going to make chemistry and squad building more flexible or less flexible.
Yeah, that's a really big conversation right now. And I think the way that it will be less flexible is if you're trying to get everybody on the 33 chem points or 33 chem.
Team chem, yeah.
And I think the way that's going to be more flexible is if you realize that, okay, I'm not being penalized for being less than optimal chem. So, playing a person on 1 chem point or 2 chem points may not be that bad realistically, but of course everybody will want to get the 3 chem points because then their players will play the best and their chem styles will have the biggest boost on the stats on the card. So I think that's a bit of change in our minds when we think about building squads, is not every player will technically have to be on perfect chem, although we will probably all design our squads so that they are, if that makes sense.
Exactly. So you still get your boosts for your 1, 2 and 3 chemistry points, but you are going to have those base stats if you play a player off chem, even if they're out of position, which we'll get to in a second. And Matt, this is interesting, especially for people running first owner, or if you just pack a really good untradeable player, because you'll be able to just pop them into your team.
That's one of the things that I think we've really got to get. That's a big hurdle, I would say, for the community to get over, is because we're so used to having 100 chemistry. To not have the full 33 is going to feel very, very strange for quite a while. This is a habit that we've had since Ultimate Team started. So sort of going back to maybe only having sort of 12 or 15 out of 33 chemistry, it feels weird for me to even think about that. I mean, I'm looking at the squad builders right now and I'm like, it doesn't look right. But I guess we'll get used to it. And as you say, for first owner, you're not going to be having to sit there and think, oh, I need to get Nuno Mendes or something to link with my Kimpembe so that my team works. If I get an Alphonso Davies, typically someone that's very, very difficult to link without the buy-in links, you can now play him in your team and there's no sort of negative effect of having him off chemistry.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, if for some reason Pavard has 90 pace next cycle, which he won't, you could just pop him in at right back. Is he still at Bayern?
He is.
But because you have 2 players of the same club, actually Davies and Pavard are both going to get 1 chemistry point.
Exactly.
So it does make a difference. And actually club links are still going to be relevant, but just not position to position. One thing that I think is quite interesting about this is I think it makes it much harder to get, as Nate was saying, your full team chemistry. Although that team chemistry doesn't give you a bonus to the rest of the team, right? It just indicates how many points you have, doesn't add anything. But it's very hard to get full chem, but it's much easier to get some chem. And I think this is very much geared towards new players to Ultimate Team. And I think as someone who's introduced various people who I know in real life over the years to to Ultimate Team, some of them have just been almost immediately put off by how complicated the chemistry system is. It's not loads simpler, but it is going to be more straightforward. So I think that in itself is good. But then you've also got the fact that actually they're not going to be penalizing themselves too much if they're not able to create a very strong, high enough chemistry team. But there is still that difficulty in terms of getting the highest chemistry. The only thing is, Japes, is this going to lead to a lack of innovation? Because the easiest way to get 3 chem points is just have like a full Premier League team. Or does that matter because people do that anyway?
I think people end up kind of squad building like that anyway, a little bit. I just think it gives you more flexibility. So like if you, I don't know, if you're a Spurs fan and you want to use Heung-min Son, you no longer have to try to like force in some average Spurs midfielder or other attacker around him. You can maybe put in that special, gosh, what is their hair-pulling center back's name again?
𝘬𝘃𝗲𝗄𝘬𝘄.
You can toss him in, right? And it feels like a lot easier to sort of build like that, where you might have blocks of players from certain leagues and you know, maybe teams that way. What I would have liked to have seen here, and perhaps it's there and I'm just missing it, but I would have liked to have seen managers have a club badge as well.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, they have their league that I believe, can still change, but I would have liked to perhaps have seen them like maybe more locked so that they wouldn't be changeable, and give them a club badge as well. Because I think it would have really made chemistry a bit more interesting that way.
Yeah, that's true. Because then you could have got, I don't know, let's say you have Son, you don't have any other Spurs players on the pitch, but your manager is Spurs, and then he does get a chem point, right? So I think that kind of thing could help. For me, and this is getting into, I guess, what we'd like to see change, really feel like if you look at Nation, it's 3 players to get the first chemistry point through Nation, and it's 3 players to get the first chemistry point through League. It's totally different, really, isn't it? I mean, you so rarely see people building a team with mainly players from the same nation. And there are so many more nations that people use than leagues, really.
Yeah.
So I would like to see that drop down to 2, I would say. And then I was thinking, well, actually, should we just have it all very simple and the same? And like we have currently with clubs, where it's just 2 players for the first point, it should be 2 players, league, nation, and club. Because ultimately, you're not really being punished for having your players off chem that harshly. Yes, it's definitely going to be in your interest to get more chemistry. It just seems harsh to make it that difficult to get chemistry on players from the same nation when it's not maybe as important as it was.
Yeah, I agree with that, because even going through, this is a cheeky plug for the FUT.GG/squad builder website, which is incredibly helpful. But going through and trying to build some squads on that website, I have often found myself going towards that 2 players from the same club and then add another player in from the same league to get 2 chemistry points on those guys. And then after that, I'm looking to more league players or adding in another club to get that same sort of thing going on, and not looking to the nation because they have those, you know, they have to get 3 players to get 1 chemistry point. So I think dropping that to 2 would be really good as well. And I mean, think about it. That would just make it so much easier in the future of this year of FIFA 23 when, you know, somebody gets a special card that's from kind of a off nation, like, you know, maybe Alphonso Davies, and then there's a Canadian, like let's say Jonathan David scores an incredible goal at the World Cup and he gets a card in FIFA. So you want to use Davies and Jonathan David in your team, like boom, 2 Canadian links, you got a chemistry point like that. That sort of thing I think would be cool. So I'm with you on that.
I think they can have the same value as club and it wouldn't matter too much. Matt, what's your thought overall in terms of this? You know, do you think it's a good thing? Is it something we need? I've seen a lot of people saying, why are they changing this? This isn't something that is a problem, in quotes. Why do we need to change it?
I don't think it was necessarily needed, but I think in the long run it is going to turn out to be quite beneficial, because how many years have we just had sort of like cookie cutter teams at the start where everyone's going for, you know, the same sort of links? You know, it's always like PSG links, for example, that people go for. And, you know, I look back at last year around certain cards that were released early on. Like, I think back to that Rule Breakers Corona that came out. Remember, it was 5-star early on. People were saying it was one of the best cards in the game at that time. And you look back to the pressure it put on links, the Wilson Manafa Road to the
Yeah.
final or Road to the knockout card went fully extinct because that was the only way to link him into your team. So from a market perspective, we're potentially, reducing the strain on link investments, which I think is going to be good. You're not going to have as many extinct players. Obviously, for traders, that might hurt a little bit, but in terms of regulating the market, I think that's going to do a better job. And it's going to open up the possibilities to using those kind of cards even more. You can put them in your team, not necessarily with a ton of links if they're in an off league, but you can get them in with no sort of negative impact. So I think from that perspective, it might open up the possibilities to maybe, some new promo cards from other leagues, maybe some fan favorites that have gone to lesser leagues. I think that's probably a positive thing we can look forward to.
Yeah, and I was going to add, actually, James, this is something I was interested to hear your thoughts on. I know in the past you talked on the pod about the fact that you don't like chemistry styles and the huge boosts that they give, and how that changes things significantly or too much. I think one of the things that this does, actually, I noticed, is because it's so much harder to get players onto 3 chemistry points, generally you're going to be getting 1 or 2, which means even if they stick to a system where you have, I don't know, for the maximum boost for 3 chemistry points plus 15s in certain places, and then for 2 it's plus 10s, and then for 1 it's plus 5s, then actually, because so many people are on 2 or 1 chem rather than the 3, it is almost a indirect nerf to chemistry styles or reduction in their impact. So I guess that would be something you could potentially get behind. I don't know whether you think you would want a further reduction. They said they're going with the same chemistry styles, Hawk, Hunter, etc.
TBD, reserving my judgment there. I think we'll see. I think any reduction from the jump is potentially a good thing. The tricky part for me with chemistry styles is the way that they're divided up amongst the attributes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Say you have 6 total chemistry points we'll use Hunter because it's easy, right? 3 on pace, 3 on shooting stats. Why, if you only get access to like 3 of those points, are they like 2 on pace and 1 on shooting, or 1 on pace and 2 on shooting? I think that might be helpful to like understand a little bit if players aren't going to be on 10 chem more often than not.
Yeah, it is quite skewed between different stats within those chemistry styles as well. Actually, we should move on to positioning, which I think is a huge
such a win
element to this. And you think this is a good thing. So just to explain the kind of rough idea here, essentially players have a starting position, but they'll also have alternative positions. Those alternative positions are based on their real life alternative positions. And what this means is someone like 𝘵𝘃𝗍 has their striker base position or preferred position, but they'll also have, it seems, centre forward and left wing. And I should say the reason why he has centre forward is actually because there are automatic defaults for some positions. So striker automatically has centre forward as one of the alternative ones, and then a centre forward will automatically have striker. It's the same for left back, left wing back, right wing back, left mid, left wing, right mid, right wing, and vice versa. So that is worth remembering. So basically, he can be converted into a centre forward or a left winger, and there is just one position change consumable in the whole game. There are no more millions of different consumables for different positions, which cost loads. They're going to have to keep these, I would say, relatively affordable, or at least monitor it, because there is just that one position change. It is really important. People will be using them quite a lot. If a player is out of position, they don't contribute to the chemistry of other players who are the same league, nation and club. So if Mbappé's there, he's not going to be contributing to other French Ligue 1 or PSG players in terms of their chemistry, which is obviously a huge disadvantage. And chemistry is still going to be important. I think particularly on things like centre-backs, getting all 3 boosts, all 3 chem points will make a big difference, because that could be plus 10 pace, and obviously 80 and 90 pace is a huge difference. Imagine how much more you're going to pay for a player who's 80 rather than 90 pace at centre-back. So I think that is still going to be very much desirable to get those 3 chem points on certain players. In fact, a lot of players, especially at the start. But Japes, you said you're really enthusiastic for the positioning thing. What is your reason for the enthusiasm?
Well, I have 2 thoughts here, Ben. One, it simplifies it so much, and you can actually move players. Like Cancelo is the great example, right? He can play on either side, and having, like, for me early on, then purchasing a player like that is great. It gives me a ton of flexibility in how I think about building my squads. It makes it a little bit more interesting, and it makes it a little more, I guess, realistic off the top to put them in positions that they commonly play. Now that leads to my second point, which is, shapeshifter type promos have been a big deal over the years. Are shapeshifter cards going to have, when they made 𝘪𝘤𝘠𝘠𝘬 a center back this year, right? Via shapeshifters. Is that shapeshifter card going to have different preferred positions than regular 𝘪𝘤𝘠𝘠𝘬?
Yeah, potentially. And it'd be interesting in terms of how they sort of market it, if you like, because it's not immediately obvious on the card what the alternative positions are. This is one of my biggest criticisms, I'd say, is that you can't really see very easily what the alternative positions are. And actually, that alternative position is as important as the preferred position. It's only one consumable to change it, and every player is slightly different. So it'll be interesting to see if they do a promo around this, like how they're going to have to communicate that, I guess, via... I guess it's similar to skill moves and weak in a way. They'll communicate it when they put out the players, that these players do have another alternative position, which is interesting. Nate, what's your thought on this? I guess from a training perspective, it's very interesting, especially for SBCs, because we should say that SBCs are going to use this new chem system as well, so these positional changes will matter a lot.
Yeah, they will. And that's, even from the get-go of the year this year, the first thing that I thought of is that people are going to be running to squad builder like SBC solutions a lot at the beginning of the game because they haven't quite figured out chemistry yet. And they're going to be like, how do I get this done? So they're going to be going to look up these solutions to finish these SBCs. I think that'll happen a lot. But yeah, I think the whole shapeshifter comment that Japes made, I think that's a really good point because it said in the pitch notes that certain live campaigns, aka promos, will add preferred or alternative positions to these cards. So when they decide to do that, that will happen. So that's kind of cool, but it does seem like a shapeshifter type of thing. Like if 𝘪𝘤𝘠𝘠𝘠 is a center back, will he then be able to be position changed to like CDM or right back, or will he also be able to be striker, like his base card is or whatever? So yeah, I'm definitely interested in that, but I like the basis around the whole position change idea is cool. I guess the thing that people are probably going to complain about is probably not a valid complaint in my opinion because of the way chemistry is changing. Like now you can't move a striker to center mid or to center attacking mid for most items where you could for everybody last year. But now a striker can get chemistry with the right back. So you don't really need to, that sort of thing. So I think that in combination with the chemistry change, I think it's cool.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think about it? Because one of the interesting things that I noticed is CDM doesn't switch to CM back again. Same with CAM. So you can have players who are stuck in CM, and I guess you're going to have to change formation to get them in rather than just position.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things I wanted to know, because what if, for example, you want to get, say you're running a 3-5-2 or whatever, and you want 3 strikers in your team, but they only, the 3 strikers you want, for example, only have that striker position. There's no, how are you going to go about that?
Well, they'd have centre forward as well by default, but that doesn't help in CAM, but they have to be an actual CAM to get CAM.
So then are we going to have to then maybe change around our squad building where we can only have 2 strikers in any given formation unless they've got that extra position?
Yeah, although actually, interestingly, they've changed and removed left forward and right forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
And made the 4-3-2-1 and the 3-4-2-1 have centre forwards instead of left forward and right forward. So that would actually allow you to play 3 strikers because every striker can be changed into a centre forward in the 3-4-2-1 and 4-3-2-1.
Okay.
So actually you can still do that, and it's kind of good they made that change, I guess, to allow you to do that. I'm not sure that was intentional, but it's certainly helpful. I think it's going to be one of those things. There's going to be new trade-offs to be made, basically.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. But again, something that I'm sure we'll discover down the line, and there might be potential for maybe new formations or maybe some tweaking in current formations to allow for certain play styles if those issues do arise. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Do you want to hear an early meta tip, everyone? Because I found out something very spicy. Basically, you can convert players like left backs often to left mid. So, for example, 𝘬𝘃𝗲𝘃 can be converted to a left mid. And what that means is you can have a left back, regular left back, who's good, and you can have Davies in your team, and you can move Davies into centre mid.
Ooh.
And so a good example would be in the 4-1-2-1-2 wide with a left mid, right mid, CDM, cam, and you can have like a CDM player in CDM, and then you can have Davies at left mid, and you can have both of those players move into the midfield and use the other players as your attacking players. And obviously Davies is like a ridiculously good midfielder who, I don't know, I guess he'll be probably kind of expensive at the start, but there are other players like this, like Acuna would be a really good example of that. Someone who can play really well in midfield and can now potentially be on actually full chem at the very start of the game in that position. So there is going to be some fun tactical maneuvers you can do. And one thing that's interesting, I don't know whether anyone else realized this, but actually it makes it much more possible that you'll actually just play in the starting setup you have, which is quite nice as well. So there'll probably be less like in-game switching around for people potentially.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there about moving the players, like since they only have 1 or 2 positions that they can technically be changed to, whereas other central players in previous years could be moved from CDM all the way to striker, you're going to have to like think a little bit more about your team. Like you were just saying, like, okay, what can I do? What position changes can I put on a player to get the in-game squad that I want with the new system? So I think that'll happen a lot. And I found myself when building squads on the FUT GG website, I'm using way more position changes to flip players around or to move them based on my formation or just in general. Like I think I'm using that position change card a lot. So not saying that it's going to be expensive, super expensive on the market, because I think they're going to have to supply it a lot. It's the only position change card that'll be in packs. So it's, again, like all this stuff until the game starts, we're thinking about it. We can draw some conclusions and stuff, but we just kind of have to wait and see what it's like when it actually gets released and stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to move on to next exceptions, actually, because there are certain exceptions to this, particularly, as you'd imagine, icons. They, rather than giving 1 chemistry point towards their nation, they're going to give 2, but they'll have no league contribution, I guess, because their league is the icon league. And this is interesting because it's actually, I would say, worse than heroes, because heroes give 1 to nation and they give 2 to league, and most people build around leagues, right?
Absolutely.
Japes, again, we've talked before about icons being kind of left behind, and it feels like they're just going to get further left behind by that.
Yeah, I mean, especially the icons that are, you think like 𝗵𝗀𝘀𝘁.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of icons who are rarely going to be contributing any chem to anyone, which is a bit of a shame. I mean, maybe they could have done it so it contributes 1 player towards every nation, perhaps?
Yeah.
Ooh.
That is perhaps like way overpowered for the new system.
Yeah, well, especially if you had 2, because
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, totally. It just becomes like really, really easy to, I guess, set it up.
Do you think this might be one of those things where they're thinking, well, we can always improve them. We can't make them worse.
I don't know, man. That's super. I mean, maybe the move would have been to give them a nation and a league.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Give heroes just like league chem and give icons nation and league.
Yeah. Well, I can kind of see why, because I was thinking, oh, shouldn't they just make heroes 2 league? But then it'd be really weird because they have a nation on their card but aren't contributing towards their nation. So it's kind of, I was like, oh, there must be an easy solution to make icons better, but it was harder than I thought. I was thinking maybe they could just add extra nations. It could just be more than 2. It could be 3 or 4.
I was just going to say, this is another argument in favor of turning the nation chemistry from 3 points to 2.
It is, yeah.
If you have an icon, automatically, boom, there's 2. So then any other player you put in on that next nation is going to be, 1 chemistry point to the next possible point or threshold. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if it was 2 players for the first threshold and then another 2 players for the second threshold to get 2 points, then you'd only need 2 players from that icon's nation, and those 2 players would get 2 chem points, and obviously the icon would be on full chem, so that would be potentially a way of improving it.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to say is, weirdly, I think managers might even be better than icons too, because they add 1 player to nation and 1 player to league, but obviously they don't count as a player on the pitch. So that, I think, again, makes them quite strong.
Yeah, what you said like earlier, the 2 club combination plus 1 player from the same league gets you 2 chemistry points. If you throw a manager in there from that league, then automatically two of those three players will be on 3 chem points. You'll have that one player that's still on 2 that will need some other links. But then from there, I know it's only 3 players out of your squad of 11, but you can start to build out from there. So yeah, the managers this year intend basically from going from, they give 1 chemistry point out of 10 chemistry in the old FIFA way. Now they give 1 chemistry point out of 3. So it's like 1/10 to 1/3 is their contribution. It's pretty sizable.
Yeah, although they don't give a whole point, right? They do just give the 1 play. But you're right, it is a significant advantage. There's still a lot of thinking to be done on it. We'll see how it develops, I guess. Interested to know, of course, what listeners are thinking about this. It's a significant change. And I think one thing, having experimented with this a lot, is worth mentioning. It's going to be much harder for current FUT players to get their head around it, I think, than new FUT players.
Yeah.
Because your brain is just so programmed, right, to think about things in terms of position. Multiple times I went to put players next to other players because I was thinking about the positional links. So, yeah, I don't know whether you have any kind of tips for people with a way to think about it, but it is going to be a challenge at first, but I think will end up being fairly simple once people get it.
Yeah, I think this change by EA is most definitely because it's a World Cup year. They expect a lot of people to hop on the game for the first time because of the publicity of that. I mean, what a better year to change it, like this is kind of the optimal time to do that. So yeah, for new FUT players not having any idea of what the chemistry was before, this will just be them learning fresh. And yeah, I guess that 𝘬𝗪𝘀𝘁 website, I know I've said it like 3 times now, but over the summer, if you spend like 5 minutes trying to build a squad on there, especially as they drop like the database as we get closer to FIFA 23, that'll be a huge help in figuring out and just starting to wrap your mind around that. And I've just tried to like throw all the thoughts of the previous chemistry system like out the window. Like, okay, I'm forgetting everything about that and then not like just focusing on the new one. So
yeah, that's a good point. Something I didn't mention because it doesn't factor in, but people may be thinking in their head about is loyalty. And that has no part in chemistry. But there is still like a symbol I think they've added, or I guess there wasn't a symbol before, so they have added a symbol. If you flick the right stick across to, do the different player views, it's also how you see alternative positions, for example. You can see a little like icon there which has a number 1 and it shows that the player is a first owner, which is, I guess, helpful. Something we haven't had before.
Yay. Why don't first owners get extra stars, Ben?
We'll just make Matt too OP. I think that's the truth of it. Actually, Matt, do you have anything to add, particularly before we move on from chemistry? There's not too much else to cover now.
No, I think we've covered it. I've got to say, I do like that little touch with the first owner symbol. This is how much of a degenerate I am with FIFA. It's like something as small as that, as just this tiny little icon that says number 1 on it, and I'm very happy with that. It's the small things that please me. It's no need for a new chemistry system. Just give me a little 1 on the card, and that's me set for the new year now.
You should add it to your branding.
I've never thought of that. That's a brilliant idea.
That is a good idea. Yeah.
We'll have to get a tattoo after this as well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
In terms of other stuff that we haven't covered, we've got the co-op edition in Live FUT Friendlies. Specific Live FUT Friendlies are going to have different co-op rules, it seems like. A good place to add more co-op focus, I think. That makes a lot of sense. But also something we talked about before, Nate, is this change to the transfer market, which means that the transfer market is now going to be cross-play across all the consoles. So old gen and new gen. PC and Nintendo Switch have separate transfer markets. And I said when we mentioned this on the last podcast, I would ask you, Nate, when you were next on, what your thoughts were, because, yeah, this is going to be an interesting thing. Do you expect prices to sort of meet in the middle to some extent because of this? Obviously, typically PlayStation prices on popular players tend to be a fair bit higher than Xbox.
The way that I've been kind of considering it is the PlayStation market in terms of live number of transfers is usually like around 5 to 7x what the Xbox transfer market is. So if you add in the Xbox transfer market to that player pool of live transfers, yes, you're adding in all that demand of players that are playing the game that want to use the market and buy players too. But I really just think it's going to be a very similar to PlayStation market. Like if you've been on PlayStation, I think it's going to feel the exact same, except there's just going to be more competition on, trying to snipe players, or when there's like a road to the final card, when somebody scores a goal, their price is going to go up faster and quicker. Even though it already would go up really fast, it's going to happen even faster, I think, because there's more people going out and trying to get like more competition for that specific card. And then, if you're on Xbox coming to this market, I mean, it probably won't feel super different anyway prices I think will be, I mean, there really won't be a comparison because it'll all be one market per se this next year. So whatever the market is kind of set at will be the price. It won't be like, oh man, on Xbox, Marcelo is 500K, but on PlayStation, he's 900K. So I do think that it will probably correspond more with the PlayStation market, but you'll be on all one same market. So it won't be completely different between, you know, consoles. So yeah.
That makes sense. And I guess it's probably a disadvantage essentially for Xbox players to this because prices will be higher. So if you're mainly earning through match coins, this is bad because your buying power will be reduced relatively compared to before. But on the flip side, also matchmaking is crossplay 1v1, and that means that it will be a bigger player pool and probably a better experience potentially.
Yeah.
But of course, 𝗫𝗍, this is now not going to stop you matching up against pros, I guess.
Good, bring it on.
And actually, yeah, you did switch over to Xbox and were like, oh, it's better on Xbox. But
yeah, I'll put like a bow on it, or on my experience previously. PlayStation is full of a bunch of like wannabe pros that were previously like just pretty obnoxious to play against because they're trying to go out and do all the things the pros do, but they just do them all the time rather than in like the right situations, and the games just become incredibly repetitive and boring. Xbox people seem to like play the game, and it was like more free flowing than like a mechanic, I don't know, abuse cycle. So I'm a little annoyed. That said, there were plenty of times on Xbox where I'd have to wait a while to match up with somebody that had a decent connection. So hopefully this means that I won't have to wait as long for matches. But, you know, all the little wannabes, I guess, is what I'm going to call them on PlayStation. I can't say I'm super thrilled about dealing with.
Yeah.
I'm including you in that, Ben.
Man, I haven't even started playing on PlayStation properly yet. And on that, actually, probably time to bring the podcast to a close. If you've got any questions, any thoughts, particularly feedback on the chemistry system is something EA are currently looking at, then do send them in all the various ways for weekly@mail.com, at FUTweeklyPod, in the supporter Discord channel for gold or above supporters in the Pod Priority Questions channel. 𝗫𝗍, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been great to have you on again.
Great to be back chatting. I'm excited for FIFA 23. Currently taking a little bit of a pause on, 22, so I don't burn myself out here.
Sensible.
Going into the next cycle. But plenty of fun things to chat through ahead, and looking forward to. It feels so nice to have a chemistry like positional refresh. I don't care if it works out good or it ends up being terrible. The fact that it's different is exciting to me. And there's just like a lot more to experience because it's been the same way for so long. And so at least they're trying. And I got to give EA major props for that, and look forward to discussing it with all of you.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good point, actually. It can always change. That's the big thing, right? This is not set in stone. I'm sure they will tweak it. Thank you very much, 𝗫𝗍. We'll catch you soon.
Cheers.
And also thank you very much to FUT Trading for coming back. It's been great to have you on the podcast, as it often is. I think you're pretty much still grinding the first owner. Is that right? So people can head over to your streams if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all this FIFA 23 talk, there's still how many weeks of FIFA 22 left. So, we've still got a lot of content over there. We're still grinding out the potential 198s with all these incredible cards that have been released recently. So, if people want to watch that, they can catch me over at twitch.tv/MattFutTrading, most sort of weeknights and weekends grinding those menus.
Definitely. And thank you very much as well to Nate the FUT Accountant. I know it's been a little while too, but good to talk FIFA 23.
Oh, not a problem. Yeah, it is great to be back on. A lot of people are like, Nate, you're supposed to be excited for FIFA 23 because you make content on the game. And I'm like, well, no, because I'm actually excited this time because the new chemistry system, the cross-platform market, I mean, the last 2 years on the market specifically have been massive with preview packs, and then just how everything was massively different this year. Looks like a lot more changes in FIFA 23 as well. So that's got me excited, and just, all the new features of the game. I think there's plenty of reason to be genuinely excited.
Yeah, certainly. Looking forward to talking about it all here on the FUT Weekly podcast. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode, listener. It's been great to have you along. And if you've enjoyed this, then do subscribe to the podcast on all your podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. And also on YouTube. If you're a supporter of the podcast, a huge thank you for supporting the pod and keeping it going. It's greatly appreciated. Plus, of course, a big thank you to those icon patrons. Dave B, Coach Vass, Chris W, DJ FIFA Player, Hugh J, Steve C, Matt L, Alistair, Alan G, Anthony R, Dominic, Rob P, L, Jeff B, Christopher R, Stephen F, Michael, Tom B, Damon H, Nick Jack M, Eric T, Roger D, Alex M, Dan W, Siler P, Matt H, Harry P, Neil P, Adam G, @𝘵𝗱𝗶𝗀𝘀𝘁, Brian S, Andrew C, Sam K, Jake G, Michael P, Zach O, Springford, Patrick, Dominic G, Adam HC, Adam R, Andy H, Joe W, Dylan, Orion B, Mindor L, and Tim J. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. FIFA's a bit like life really. It has its many ups and its many downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to 𝘬𝗃𝗲𝗀𝗏.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to 𝘬𝗃𝗲𝗀𝗏.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.